Good morning and welcome to Bali Covid-19 Update. My name is Bruce and this is November 14th, 2021. And today I'm experimenting with using a new lav mic to see how it's going to work when I'm shooting outside. And no matter what I do, this is just such a noisy kampung. But we'll see how it works anyway. Right now I'm monitoring the sound levels to see if everything's okay, and it seems like it. So as usual, on Sunday, lots of stuff, and well, a couple of really interesting things. The Bali governor and a decision on parties and events with the holiday season coming up. And well, kind of a complete reversal from what was said just last week. We're going to start first with some quarantine information for those of you that are coming in overseas, bringing children with you. So let's take a look at that. And here's some not so good news for those of you who have children and are planning on coming to Bali soon. Children who have not been vaccinated after traveling abroad must be quarantined 5 days. If you're an adult and you've been fully vaxxed, you've got the 3-day quarantine. But if you have your kids with you and they have not been vaxxed, that means you're going to have to quarantine for 5 days. Sorry. That's the rules now. This was announced at a press conference on the 9th by the head of the expert team for COVID-19 handling task force. So just a heads up for those of you planning on coming in, and remember, if you're coming in right now, the only way you can get in is through Jakarta, and that's coming in with DB211A and business, right? I know a lot of people are coming in that way now. If you're bringing your kids in with you, you're going to have to quarantine for 5 days. Sorry. All right. I hope that's helpful information for you. And let's take a look at the numbers, which are continuing to be excellent. And what do we have? The 7-day average for new positive cases is 10. The 7-day average for deaths is still at 1. New positive cases around Indonesia, 359, and deaths 16. So good news nationally and locally. What about testing? Well, yesterday in Indonesia, 184,695 people were tested with a 0.19% positivity rate, and the 7-day simple average positivity rate was 0.24, looking good still. And no data available on testing in Bali, so we'll just have to forego that today. And what about the vaccination numbers? Vaccination numbers yesterday were 3,430,695, 76.8% of the population. So this is almost not changed at all in the last week. It is going really slow. We're just kind of at a standstill here. People are still being vaccinated, but not that many. It's not moving up that quickly. And what about second doses? Second doses, 2,982,668, 66.8% of the population. That went up 0.1% in the last 4 days. And yesterday, 5,149 additional doses were administered in Bali. What about the Bali numbers? New positive cases, 11. Okay, so we had 4 the other day and we had 8. We got 11 today. So we're hovering right around the 10 mark, which is our average. And so that's excellent. Recoveries, 23. Deaths, 3. Deaths are up. Don't know why that is. That's unfortunate. And active cases in Bali, 195. So good numbers. But as I'm going to mention just a minute ago, we take a look at what's happening in Europe, and that is something that we need to pay close attention to. Our numbers are good. Our numbers are great. But there's spikes all over the world. What's happening with that? Countries hailed as COVID-19 success stories are now reimposing restrictions. And this is something that the Indonesian government has been worried about and that they've given as a reason for going so slow. As Australia has eased its restrictions on travel, and Indonesia is letting people come in, and Thailand has opened up, and other countries in the region are getting to do this. In Europe, different story. With winter approaching in the northern hemisphere, many European countries that scrapped COVID-19 restrictions after achieving high rates of vaccination are finding themselves forced to backpedal. Among them, Denmark, which was considered to be one of the best performers in the pandemic period. Denmark was one of the first countries in Europe to lift all domestic COVID-19 restrictions on the 10th of September when 80% of the population aged 12 and over had been fully vaccinated. However, on the 9th of November, Denmark recorded 2,562 new daily COVID-19 cases and 2 deaths. This was a 5-fold increase in daily cases in just 1 month. After declaring COVID-19 just an illness that is not a critical threat to society, the Danish government now is reintroducing the health pass because of the sharp rise in COVID-19 infections. According to the Danish Prime Minister, the Epidemic Commission has recommended the government classify the coronavirus as a socially threatening disease and reimpose the pass. The Prime Minister acknowledged that the return of the pass is going to make life more difficult for those who have not been vaccinated, but she said, "That's how I think it should be." Okay, getting tough. She added the health authorities were expecting more people to be infected by COVID-19 and hospitalized, but things have gone faster than expected. And in Norway, 2,126 cases were recorded on Tuesday, the highest daily rate since the pandemic started. In Germany, as I talked about the other day, they have the pandemic of the unvaccinated. The Czech Republic, which had really severe restrictions and then relaxed them, reintroduced restrictions late last month as cases soared, including requiring restaurants to check customers' vaccination status. You know what a stir that's causing in the United States. On Tuesday, Czech authorities recorded 14,539 new cases, the highest daily total since March. And in South Korea, citizens are urged to take a COVID-19 booster shot as more elderly have become ill. And this is despite South Korea getting ready to open up slowly. And because of their travel bubble, they have 2 travel bubbles, one with Saipan and one with Singapore, as I've talked about, or I will talk about. I'm not sure where this is going to be in the line of segments. So some bad news, and this is one of the things that Indonesia is really worried about, is that they're going to open up and then there's going to be a surge in cases and they're going to have to reimpose restrictions and everybody is going to freak out and it's going to turn off international tourists, which are afraid of, and it will also make all of us here crazy as well. And what's happening in Malaysia? Malaysia's National Recovery Council proposes to open borders to international visitors by January 1st next year. The NRC, after taking into account the vaccination level of the country, decided that the borders should be open to international visitors by January 1st, 2022. Malaysia closed its borders to international tourists last year, and according to the Prime Minister, tourism is one of the most important economic sectors in Malaysia. Malaysia has lost some 21 billion US dollars because of the pandemic and closing. That's how much tourism would have brought in. And how's this going to work? Once the borders are reopened, only visitors from countries that have managed to control the transmission of COVID-19 and have high vaccination rates will be allowed to enter Malaysia. Now, in Bali, we have high vaccination rates. In Java, a lot of Java, we have high vaccination rates. In other parts of the countries, we don't. And so how is this going to affect the travel corridor that Indonesia and Malaysia have agreed on? According to this article, 95% of Malaysia's adult population have been fully vaccinated. I'm guessing that's the target population, but I don't know, it doesn't say here. And late last month, the government announced that Langkawi was going to be open to international tourists in a quarantine-free travel bubble beginning November 15th, which is tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. This past week, Malaysia and Singapore announced that they have a vaccinated travel lane which will go between Changi and the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, and that will start on November 29th. So more work on opening up and getting business going between countries here in Southeast Asia. Let's hope that we can avoid a surge over the next 2 months. And what's happening with the travel arrangements and travel bubbles and the TCAs and well, there's all sorts of different initials now. Indonesia-Malaysia leaders agreed to travel corridor arrangements. So the leaders of Indonesia and Malaysia said that they agreed to start a travel corridor arrangement, this is TCA, between the two countries, and the details will be firmed up later. The Malaysian Prime Minister was here to meet with President Jokowi and said that the opening of a travel corridor between the two countries can help facilitate post-pandemic economic recovery in both countries. The Malaysian Prime Minister said, "I've agreed with the President that the relevant ministers will look into more detail so that we can start opening the two countries. We can open our borders, and maybe we can start with this initial framework. Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, Bali, Kuala Lumpur." So, okay, get some flights in from Malaysia into Bali. And this travel lane will give priority to those who have been fully vaccinated, for officials, business travelers, and those traveling for medical and humanitarian reasons. The travel corridor will involve mutual recognition of COVID-19 vaccination certificates and standard COVID PCR screening test results, according to the governments. So no definite date, but hopes that it will start early in 2022, which means sometime. And something else good came out of this meeting besides just the travel corridor discussions. Memorandum of understanding was signed between the two countries to protect Indonesian migrant workers in Malaysia. And if you've been here for a long time and you follow local news, you know that this has been a problem. The mistreatment of Indonesian migrant workers to Malaysia. It's been a problem for a long time. According to the Prime Minister, Malaysia has taken steps for the protection of Indonesian migrant workers, including passing a new law to ensure minimum standards of housing facilities for the comfort of foreign workers in the country. And some more about what's happening in Asia with quarantines and international tourists. Korea to ease rules on mandatory quarantine for more international tourists. A travel bubble's been signed between Korea and Singapore, that was done in October, and it will go into effect tomorrow. And this is for travelers who have been fully vaccinated. The government said they will expand the list for quarantine-free travel gradually after monitoring the COVID-19 situation in each country. Singapore is the second destination that Korea has signed a travel agreement with. The first one was Saipan, and apparently a lot of Koreans like to go to Saipan. The government said it will also gradually resume visa waiver and no visa entry programs that have been suspended since the pandemic began. And they will begin to resume international flights at regional airports at the end of November. It's going to actively utilize the popular tourism promotional video series, Feel the Rhythm of Korea. And they will be using a soccer player, I guess he's a well-known soccer player in Korea, as well as the Netflix hit series Squid Game, if you've seen that, in order to attract more international visitors to Korea. According to the Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, we're aiming to attract 25 million international tourists in 2025. The largest number of international visitors to enter Korea was in 2019, right before the pandemic started, and that was 17.5 million. So, good news if you want to go to Korea. Maybe they will open up a travel bubble with us soon. That would be nice. I'd like to go to Korea. I have a number of friends there. And what about China? Well, China is talked about all the time because, well, there's 1.5 billion Chinese. They love traveling, and they bring in a lot of money into countries in Southeast Asia. And so we've talked about what's going on with the Chinese before in terms of travel. What about what's happening internally? Beijing seals off mall housing compounds over COVID-19 outbreak. Beijing authorities have sealed off a mall and locked down several residential compounds over a COVID-19 flare-up as the latest outbreak spread to the Chinese capital. Not a good time to do that. There's big government meetings going on there. 6 new cases were found in Beijing's central districts on Thursday, and Raffles City Mall in Dongchen was sealed off after a close contact of a person with COVID-19 was found to have visited the mall. Nobody was allowed to leave, staff and customers, until everybody was tested. Now, you can do this in China. You can't do it in most places. Videos shared on social media platform Weibo showed crowds of shoppers in masks lining up to be tested inside the shopping center. The mall remained closed on Thursday. I'm not sure if it's open yet. Beijing health authorities said that more than 280 close contacts have been identified and almost 12,000 people have been screened for the virus in 2 districts. According to a city government spokesperson, this cluster outbreak was sudden, with many places covering a large area. It involved many people, and prevention and control is very difficult. 5 residential communities, a primary school, and 2 office compounds were placed under snap lockdowns on Thursday, with tens of thousands of residents barred from leaving and made to undergo mass testing. Live streams on local media of the area showed staff in hazmat suits piling up bags of food for residents stuck inside. And as you probably know, China is continuing to pursue a strict zero COVID-19 strategy that everybody else basically has forgotten about and said, no way, not happening. We're not going to get rid of this. We've got to figure out ways to live with it. I was going to leave with a different segment for Bali News, but this just came in, and so I'm leading with this. And this is about the quarantine. And Koster admits he will ask for a discounted tourist quarantine period to 1 day. So the governor wants the quarantine to be moved down to 1 day. Surprise, surprise. So this is the 14th. It has been 1 month exactly that we have been open for international flights and international guests coming directly into Bali. And what have we got? 0 flights and 0 tourists. And the hotels are still pretty empty. Well, except for locals and those foreigners that are here on a variety of visas, residents, and people on the B211As. So in other words, it's dead. The governor was asked about the 20,000 bookings that he mentioned a while ago, and he couldn't confirm that there were 20,000 bookings made. But he says that tourists from Japan want to come. He's been informed by Garuda that Japanese tourists are coming, but he doesn't know the date and he doesn't know how many. So are these still mystery tourists like the 20,000? I don't know. On the issue of the quarantine, the governor said the quarantine is holding back people from coming, and he said that he feels that 1 day is sufficient. He said we can eliminate it or we can go to 1 day, and of course 1 day is what they're doing in Bangkok while you're waiting for the results of your PCR test, which is what the governor mentioned. He said what's important is that you're fully vaccinated and you have the negative PCR test upon arrival. And the governor is planning on proposing it. I assume he's planning on proposing it to the central government, either President Jokowi or Pak Luhut or Pak Sandiaga Uno or who knows who else. But will this happen? I don't know. And will it make a difference? Again, not sure, and I'm going to talk about that in the wrap-up. The governor said when mentioning his planned proposal that he thinks that it's in the interest of the national government and all of Indonesia for Bali tourism to recover, because if Bali tourism recovers, that will be a stream for Indonesia's economic development. And so, got any comments on what do you think about the 3-day quarantine versus a 1-day quarantine? Waiting for the results, do you think that's going to have an effect on people coming in? I'm going to talk about that as soon as I finish covering the rest of the news around Bali, because there is a lot. In the November 7th video, I talked about nightclubs being allowed to host events. That was according to the head of the Bali Province Civil Service Unit, Satpol PP Idewa Nyoman Rai Darmadi, and he said there was no prohibition on holding parties at nightclubs. But things have changed. Now, that was with the understanding that the clubs would monitor themselves, that they would stick to health protocols. But this has all changed. Remember in the last video, there are complaints from Pak Luhut about beach bars in Bali. Well, that seems to have caused a reversal in what is allowed here. Party events at Bali nightclubs are still prohibited by the Bali COVID-19 task force. So this was reaffirmed after an evaluation by the coordinating minister, Pak Luhut. According to Imade Renton, the secretary of the Bali COVID-19 task force, he said, so far it is still prohibited. We are in line with the confirmation of the National Task Force. This is another issue of coordination between the central government and the regional government. Who's in charge? Obviously the central government is in charge. There aren't going to be any events, apparently, as of today. Now this could change tomorrow. So at the order of the governor, Satpol PP and other agencies will be checking on nightclubs around Bali to make sure that they are not holding events. Pak Renton said, up to now, no permits have been given for any nightclubs to hold events. And he said he's already been asked by some hotels and he's had to deny them permission. Pak Renton finished his comments by saying, we are waiting for developments from the National Task Force. Okay, so that's who seems to be in charge, regardless of what local officials are saying. So if you want to have a Christmas party or New Year's party, it looks like it's not happening right at this point. But who knows, because things change quickly here. And what is happening in Bali? Reasons for having been vaccinated. Stubborn residents don't wear masks when leaving the house. Just started raining, so we'll see how that sound comes out here. The Civil Service Police Unit, Satpol PP, Denpasar City, held a health raid this week. The health raid was held on Jalan Kertanegara in front of the Pogading Market in Ubud. During this raid, officers arrested 27 residents and motorists who violated the law. So this is not just picking on foreigners, they're getting everybody these days. According to the Denpasar City Police Chief, Dewa Sayoga, they violated the use of mask. And for the details, there were 12 people who did not wear masks properly. Probably chin mask or down here. My wife likes to do that sometimes. And 15 people did not use masks. The 12 people who did not wear masks properly were given warnings or trained, and the 15 people who did not use masks were fined 100,000 rupiah. According to the police chief, wearing masks is getting a little less regular. So, he said, they'll be having more frequent raids, as well as providing direct socialization to the community. Why did they not wear masks? Well, a lot of reasons. Some because they just forgot them. Some because, oh, they're inside a motorcycle. I just didn't put it on. And he said some have classic reasons, like, I'm not going very far, so I don't need a mask. Or, I have it in my pocket. I just didn't wear it. And some people said, I've already been vaccinated 2 times. I don't need it anymore. Or, there are hardly any positive cases anymore. What's the point of wearing a mask? So, is this a sign of how people are feeling? And the police chief ended up his comments, as everybody does. Don't ignore 3M health protocols. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and always keep your distance. How frequently is the non-mask wearing happening? And you know about keep your distance. I've talked about that before. Just does not happen. I was at the mini market today with my granddaughter Zoe, and we were doing a little shopping, and there were 3 people came in, and they were as close to me as they could get without touching me, even though there were clearly marked red lines on the floor where they were supposed to stand. Getting harder and harder these days. More on people not wearing masks. The Gotong Royong task force still finds residents who aren't wearing masks. Okay, that's here in Buleleng. The other segment was talking about the issue down in Denpasar, so this is happening all over the island. The Buleleng Traditional Village Task Force for Mutual Cooperation still finds people are reluctant to wear masks, or some people are reluctant to wear masks. The task force was out on Galungan checking to see what was happening. Several locations around Sigaraja and Buleleng were being monitored to make sure that people did not collect en masse for prayers on Galungan. And according to this article, a lot of people were praying individually, not en masse. had. Wasn't at any of the temples to see, so I don't know. I hope so. So while people were praying individually and not gathering en masse, there were still people who were reluctant to wear masks. However, the authorities noted that there were no more than 10 people, and they were immediately given education by the task force and also given masks to wear. According to a spokesperson, even though the pandemic is now far down the road, we hope people don't let their guard down. But people are letting their guard down. And I can understand it. As I've said many times, I just hate wearing the damn mask. When I went out to the store today with Zoe, we went to the bank first, which isn't that far away. It's maybe, 500 meters. And then turned around and came back and went to Alpha Mart. And by the time I got home, I was soaking wet. My glasses were fogged up because my mask was wet. Oh, yeah. And more on what's happening in Bali, and this is really too bad. On Galungan, a yoga place in Ubud burned down. In Banjar, New Kuning, a Mas village in Ubud, a yoga studio, I guess I could call it a yoga studio, burned down on Wednesday. This happened about 8:40 in the morning on Galungan morning. There were no casualties, fortunately, but the place was gone. Losses for the owner amounted to approximately 50 million rupiah. The name of the yoga place, Mashka Temple, and the building was made with traditional materials. It was roofed with reeds and bamboo poles. So when it started burning, it burned. According to the head of Gianyar Satpol PP, Imadewatha, after receiving the report, 2 units of firefighting fleets from the Ubud Fire Brigade post were sent directly there along with 8 personnel. It took approximately 1 hour to extinguish the fire. And according to PLN and the Klian Adat, the cause of the fire? A short, electrical short. And if you've lived here a long time, particularly if you live in, traditional places that are not made for Westerners up to Western standard, you know we have not enough outlets, and you just plug everything in there, and shorts are not uncommon. Happened here, I don't know how many years ago now, right next door. Guy's place burned down. A lot of my house was damaged as well. That unfortunately is an all too common occurrence here, but as I said, nobody was killed, so that was good. And in local news, PDAM Buleleng to raise tariffs. Oh no, that's going to affect me. So what is PDAM? PDAM is the water department. And the tariffs are going to be adjusted in January 2022. The tariff currently is 2,340 rupiah per cubic meter, and it will be raised to 2,550 rupiah per cubic meter, an increase of 210 rupiah per cubic meter. And the tariff is being increased in an effort to help with operational and maintenance costs. According to the President Director of Buleleng PDAM, every year the purchase of equipment such as pipes continues to increase by 7%. Last year there was no raise because of the pandemic, and so this year there is going to be one. They have no choice. They need to get some more money. In addition to the delay in an increase because of COVID-19, the number of people in arrears went up as well, and so arrears reached 8 billion rupiah from 2022 to November of 2021. 8 billion rupiahs, wow, that's a lot of money. According to the director, they cannot provide relief in forms of eliminating fines for customers who are in arrears and paying their bills. However, before sealing, that is, before shutting off your water, they are going to give you 6 months now instead of 3, which is the current policy. And more on Bali. Officials plan to improve tourism in Western Bali. Okay, tourism in Western Bali and tourism up here in North Bali, much behind tourism in the south and tourism in Ubud. It was one of the reasons to put an international airport here, that mythical international airport. Officials from the Jembrana regional government have planned to build an all-in-one circuit to attract more tourism to the western side of Bali. An official from Pengambangan village in Jembrana confirmed that the regional government will begin construction of an all-in-one circuit in the village by 2022 as an effort to increase economic activity in Jembrana. The project was initiated and funded by the Tourism and Creative Economy Minister, but it's being actively pushed by the Jembrana government. However, there's a problem, and interesting, there are two articles on this, one in the Bali Sun and one in, I think it's Radar Bali, the link's down below, of course, and the Jembrana, the Bali Sun one said that there's going to be this all-in-one thing, circuit thing, and the one in the Indonesian paper talking about goats. And so there's a problem with the project. And the project is because the land that's going to be used for this is currently occupied by local goat farmers. And apparently the land is owned by a regional government. And so the Jembrana authorities are talking to the goat farmers to get them to relocate somewhere else peacefully, so that there is no bad feelings on any side. And so what is this all-in-one circuit going to do? Well, they're going to have several weekly events such as horse races, traditional buffalo races. I've seen some of those. They're really interesting spectacles. And traditional music festivals. Other than that, the facility will provide open green space for the local residents in the area. Sounds good. A lot of stuff planned for 2022. And more on Bali. Welcoming IBF. Bali's Ngurah Airport prepares a special route. The Indonesian Badminton Festival is going to take place starting on November 16th and it will run until December 5th. And according to the airport's authorities, they've prepared a special lane for the group of athletes. Actually, I think all the athletes have already arrived. The international event is drawing top badminton players from around the world, including gold medalists from the Tokyo Olympics, and world #1 singles player Kento Momota, and some of our top players in Indonesia. So this is going to be a big deal. I'm not sure where they're going to be playing. I love badminton. I'd like to see it, but not being there in person. I'd like to see it on TV. So the airport authority prepared special facilities for the arrivals for the athletes when they arrived the other day. And that included a special parking place and an access gate so that they could come in and their process could run more smoothly. They did go through the regular process. They had body temperature checked and travel documents done, and they were walked through. The athletes came on charter planes so that they would not mix with general passengers. And so the first contingent of athletes came on the 10th, that was Galungan, and then more came on the 11th. Athletes from 24 countries will be competing in the IBF. Something to give tourism here a little boost in Bali. Good news. And what about our old friend Pak Sandiaga Uno? What's he got to say about opening up? Well, post-pandemic Indonesia wants quality, not quantity tourists. Minister. So Indonesia is aiming for quality over quantity as Indonesia prepares for tourists coming in after the last 18 months. Of course, we still have no tourists yet. Indonesia is targeting only 2 million foreign visitors in 2022, a drop of 90% from pre-pandemic figures of close to 17 million foreign tourists a year. Rather than quantity, what is quality? Well, Indonesia is going to focus on the amount of time that visitors stay and their impact on the environment. According to the minister, this is the concept of personalized, customized, localized, and smaller, much smaller in size tourism. Pak Sandiaga said, we want to improve the number of days that they are spending in Indonesia, the length of days. We want to make sure not only a much better quality spending, but also the impact to the environment. The 17 million plus numbers put a heavy tax on our environment. We're moving into quality and sustainability type of tourism. Okay, we've heard this before. It sounds good, but is that actually going to happen? Tourism is one of the major sources of Indonesia's foreign currency earnings, contributing close to 6% of the country's gross domestic product pre-pandemic. Our tourism minister was cautious when talking about when curbs like quarantine will be lifted. He emphasized that health concerns must be the priority, but that weekly reviews are being made based on health data. He said chartered flights into Bali may be a possibility, and there is a segment on that coming up, and scheduled flights would likely follow up on that. He said there's a lot of demand for the live on boat quarantine. And I've talked about that, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 videos ago. He said that would allow them to go to dive sites and enjoy the open seas within the premise of the boat. And Pak Sandiaga said that Indonesia's health facilities are ready and that we are confident that we would be able to handle it should there be another surge. And then there is the big China question, of course. China makes up the biggest source of international arrivals, and well, it doesn't look like they're going anywhere soon. Right now they're having some problems of their own, and I've already talked about that. Pak Sandiaga said it's going to take a long time to get up to pre-pandemic levels, and that by 2024 the government hopes to get up to 8 to 10 million tourists a year. Wow, so that's another couple of years. And there's always the question of the travel lanes, the VTLs. Travel experts think that it's going to be some time before these travel corridors open up because of the disparity in the vaccination rate between countries in Southeast Asia. For example, Singapore leads the pack with over 80% of the population fully vaccinated, and they have their own problems. Myanmar, on the other hand, is 13.2% of the population fully vaccinated. And according to this article, about 70% of the population in many ASEAN countries remain unvaccinated. According to this, 28% of the Indonesian population is fully vaccinated, only 28%. Pak Sandiaga said that Indonesia is going to take baby steps in an incremental reopening as the country assumes the 2022 presidency of the G20, with Bali slated to hold the G20 summit next year. And he said that's why we have to be absolutely sure that opening up of Bali is done on a safe and secure basis. Okay, time for a wrap up. And I'm hoping that this audio is working out okay so I don't have to do this whole thing over again. Okay, so what have we got? Well, we have a little change in the quarantine. If you're bringing children in and they're unvaccinated, you're going to have to do the 5-day quarantine. That is not going to make parents very happy, I don't think. The news from Europe is something to be seriously concerned about, with a surge in cases after they would have opened up. And this is what, as I've said already, this is what the government is afraid of. And there are several segments here on problems with mask wearing. And what is that showing? As coronavirus fatigue set into Bali already, is this going to get worse as the weeks drag on and we still have no tourists here? That's hard to tell, but right now the signs are, yeah, people are getting lax. What about the change with the events? That's gonna disappoint a lot of businesses here, because this would give them a chance with domestic tourists coming in to have some parties around Christmas and New Year, and at this point, well, they're not going to be allowed to do that. Will that change? Quite likely, considering how things go here. And I'm sure there will be some pressure from business owners to loosen up on that. Is that a good idea? Going to be a lot of partygoers hanging around without masks on? Not a good idea, I don't think. But I don't know. What do you think? Would you be comfortable going to, let's say, a New Year's Eve party with 500 people and the majority of them are not wearing masks? I know some of you would, some of you wouldn't. Well, leave a comment below if you'd like to chime in on that. And the governor has said he is going to propose a 1-day quarantine, because the 8 days, the 5 days, the 3 days, we still have nothing here. And so will 1 day change things? There's a story in the Bangkok Post, and I haven't got time to put it in here. There's just so much in here. The gist of it is that people are coming in, but there's disappointment about the numbers. And so according to some officials, they're looking at things not really picking up until mid next year, the second half of next year. And so Thailand has been here in the press, and with the opening up and just a 1-day quarantine, and they've gotten people in. They're getting people in, definitely. But the big numbers, no. And according to them, they think that people are going to wait before they start to move around in mass. And tourism experts there said, and look, you know, there's competition as well. So this is going to be a slow recovery for tourism. When are we going to get planes coming directly into Bali? Nobody knows. That is the crystal ball. and the crystal ball is dark. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and you are interested in subscribing, I would welcome that. And here is my subscribe button. I still haven't changed it. That's what I'm going to do today. Okay, take care. I hope the weather is better for you wherever you are. Be kind to someone today. Stay safe. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for the comments. And I will see you on Wednesdays.